Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook for September 13th, Saturday, 2025. We are tracking an increasing chance for potential development in the MDR as we head into next week, and it's starting to look more likely that we might finally start getting development here in the Atlantic Basin for the month of September. Let's start off with the tropical weather bulletin, the latest one from the National Hurricane Center. As of 2 p.m. this afternoon, the 2 p.m. advisory, which came out, probably roughly just 2 hours ago from now, since it's almost 4 o'clock, and this came out at 1:46 p.m. Eastern Time at almost 2. And we now have a moderate chance of development here in the Eastern Atlantic. A tropical wave located near the Cabo Verde Islands is producing a large area of disorganized shower and thunderstorm activity over the far eastern Atlantic. Dry and stable air will likely limit this system's development over the next few days, but a tropical depression could form by the middle to latter part of next week, while moving west-northwestward to northwestward at 10 to 15 miles per hour over the central tropical Atlantic. Development chances in the next 48 hours, 0. But over the next 7 days, now up to a 50-50 coin flip chance that we might finally get something to develop here in the Atlantic Basin. In the Eastern Pacific, on the other hand, quite an array of things to talk about today. We have a new area of interest here that's just off the Baja Peninsula. And then we also have another area just off the southwestern coast of Mexico. And by the way, if you're asking, where did Mario go? Because we had Tropical Storm Mario just off the coast here of Mexico yesterday. It dissipated very rapidly, and now we are not even tracking it anymore. It's pretty much just a mess of showers and thunderstorms here in the Eastern Pacific, but we no longer have Mario to track. I think maybe this area here might be some of the remnants associated with Mario, but it's not really mentioned in the tropical weather outlook, so maybe not. But Mario dead, but looks like we will have another few areas that we might need to watch as we round up the week this week and head into next week for potential development in the Eastern Pacific. And I'll show you what the models show in the Pacific a little bit later on. But the gravy train of activity continuing here. It's been quite a decently active year so far in the Pacific, surprisingly, while it's, on the other hand, been very quiet in the Atlantic, and very unusual, especially given the kind of factors we have this year, which I'll show you at the very end of the video. Has to do with ENSO, but looks like the activity is going to continue here in the Pacific for the meanwhile, but watching to see if things will finally wake up here in the Atlantic Basin. But for now, looking at a satellite loop on September the 13th, not really much happening. You can see in the Eastern Atlantic here where we do have our tropical wave moving off the coast of Africa, or it is now submerged off the coast of Africa in the far Eastern Atlantic. Very disorganized right now, and it's going to remain disorganized for the next few days, but maybe as this begins to move westward, this will begin to gain some level of organization and potentially develop. And the 850 millibar vorticity map right now shows, again, disorganized, but there is some decent vorticity with this wave. So we'll see if it's able to consolidate. I mean, it is kind of stretched out right now, and that's also kind of somewhat led to the issue that we had this hurricane season, is a lot of these waves would come off the coast of Africa, and then because of dry air and shear and whatever tut situation we have in the northern Atlantic, our waves would end up getting very, very stretched out and very messy in the Eastern Atlantic here, and just not able to consolidate, especially because the environment in the Atlantic not very favorable for central convection and consolidation, as we've seen over the last several weeks. But I do want to show you this interesting map, and I barely show this, but I probably should show it a little bit more. This is the total precipitable water. So this is pretty much the moisture water content in the atmosphere. And one thing that is very interesting is, notice here in the Eastern Atlantic coming off the coast of Africa, And this is our tropical wave. You could actually kind of see the signature here with the precipitable water, some kind of turning going on in the atmosphere, and again, very reflective in the 850 millibar vorticity map. You could definitely see there's turning of the atmosphere going, so there is something going for this wave. And you also notice definitely quite a bit of precipitable water content in the eastern Atlantic right now, where we do have the tropical wave there. So, bottom line, what I'm trying to get at is there's definitely something there with this tropical wave. It definitely has a kick to it. Well, let's just see how it survives the rest of the Atlantic, especially when it'll probably get further west and it'll start having to deal with dry air and shear, or whatever the case might be. Although it looks like this time environmental conditions will be a little bit more favorable for something to try to get going. And I'll show you the models now, starting off with the European ensembles. The 12Z run, this is the 12Z run from the European ensembles, and yeah, they're quite aggressive with something trying to develop here in the Eastern Atlantic. You see, especially as this gets further north of the MDR and north of the islands, you see quite a bit of strong ensemble members, and this is now reaching into the 7 to 10 day time frame. So this might be a wave that we need to watch for some time, especially as we head into next week. Although all of the ensemble members do take this wave out to sea, as it looks like the pattern will still be very much trough centric along the East Coast, and that's kind of been a feature that we've had almost semi permanently since August, is a consistent trough and fronts off the East Coast, and partially in a way that's also part of the reason why we really have not had a lot of development in the Atlantic this year, because conditions are not very favorable in the MDR. But even if they're not as not as unfavorable in the Caribbean and Gulf, a lot of our waves would just end up getting entangled here in the Western Atlantic, and nothing is able to really make it to the Caribbean and Gulf and really blossom. So we've just not had much development at all this year. But we'll see if this is beginning to change, as we see here on the European ensembles. Again, quite a few strong members, and definitely a lot of members themselves showing development occur here in the next week in the MDR. So that's the European ensembles. There's one model showing a lot of development. And then we also have the AI model, the Google AI, and Weather Nerds does actually carry the ensemble members that the Google AI model produces. And as you see here, next week in the MDR, in the central to western MDR, look at how many ensembles show development here. Quite a lot of them, and also quite a lot of them show this storm becoming a pretty potent and a strong storm as well. And they also show generally a track a little bit more further to the west, but not really going to pay attention to exact tracks and trends right now. Just going over the general idea that we might get something to develop. You definitely see it here. That's two models, the European ensembles and the Google AI ensembles, both showing development. And then I'm not going to show you the European operational. I want to show you the GFS operational and see what they show heading into the next week for the 12Z run. And you do see that there is some development that occurs. I mean, eventually, there is something that tries to happen, but then the GFS kind of, I guess, succumbs to whatever dry air or unfavorable conditions there might be. But some development does occur here in the MDR with this wave. So we'll see if this is something that we'll have to watch. And this is again for next week. Once again, it looks like maybe finally the window of opportunity for development might begin to open here in the Atlantic. And then there's also something off the East Coast, and I've seen some people mention, some interest with potentially something trying to develop off the East Coast this time next week, so roughly a week out from now. And they're also pointing to some things that the AIFS model, the European AI model, is showing here off the East Coast. We'll go over it in more depth later on as we progress throughout this week if it continues to show up, but just want to let you know that there is some signals there happening. So bottom line, looks like the tide might be beginning to turn. We'll see if things finally begin to kick up here in the Atlantic. But really quickly, before I want to move on here, do want to show you what's happening in the Eastern Pacific, because there is quite a bit of activity that is happening. And again, the East Pac has really been a gravy train of activity. Surprisingly, this year would have moments of activity in which a lot of it would occur constantly, especially in contrast to what a lot of people were expecting would be occurring in the East Pac this year. Not a lot of people thought that this year would really be an active Eastern Pacific year at all. Yet here we are, tracking multiple areas of development. And you can see here over the next several days, and as we head into the next week, we have one here in the Central Pacific, or the Central Eastern Pacific, that develops kind of several hundred miles south of the Baja Peninsula. That develops briefly, and then that seems to move on off to the west here and just kind of fade away and not become a strong storm. But then as we head into the mid to latter part of next week, we get a pretty potent storm to develop here off the southwestern coast of Mexico. And this definitely becomes a pretty strong storm, probably already a hurricane by this point on the models. So the East Pac is still going to continue to churn. Probably going to get a few more named storms, maybe another hurricane or so here in the East Pac. Things continuing there. It's now up to watching to see when we're going to see things finally wake up here in the Atlantic, and if you actually look at the velocity potential, makes sense as to why the Eastern Pacific is getting active, and we're seeing another spark of activity right now. Because as you see right now, we have seems like a convectively coupled Kelvin wave pulse moving through the Pacific right now over the next several days, and then eventually this makes its way into the Atlantic as we head into the last 2 weeks of September, which we are beginning to enter. We're beginning to enter the second half of September, and you see here in the map, we generally have these greens and blues beginning to return to the Western Hemisphere. So Eastern Pacific gonna produce, and we also have something to track in the Atlantic. So definitely tracks, as we also are seeing coincide with that a favorable period of rising motion in the atmosphere. And then, as I want to remind you, in the Atlantic, sea surface temperature anomalies remain very, very warm, especially through the MDR. They have not gone away, and until we get to the winter and we start seeing trade winds speed up here in the Atlantic, they're not going to go away, or unless we do end up getting a strong development to occur here in the MDR over the next several weeks as we head into the rest of this month and into maybe the first week of next month, because a lot of people are mentioning, and really is starting to become a trend, and maybe that's what this year is after all, is the peak of the hurricane season really seems to be like it's starting to trend much later in time. I mean, this time last year, I remember a lot of people were also doubting the hurricane season because we also had not so active start to the month last year, although we did have some activity around this time. But we had a very late peak last year, especially with storms like Hurricane Helene and Milton. They all occurred in late September and early October. And also, funnily enough, we're going to have this next phase of the MJO, where a convectively coupled Kelvin wave of some sort moves through the Pacific and the Atlantic over the next several weeks, and it's also going to happen in mid to late September. So maybe the peak is starting to become later, and I think we will maybe still need to watch the MDR as we head into early October for potential development. But until then, things are going to remain warm, and they're going to remain prime for the hurricane season, at least as long as climatology allows for the hurricane season to be active in the first place, coupled with, as you see here in the Pacific, very, very cold sea surface temperature anomalies along the equatorial Pacific, definitely indicative of a cool neutral. In fact, a potential La Nina, because this is the updated map from the NOAA Climate Prediction Center, just as of this past week on September 11th. Um, what a very, crazy day September 11th is. Side note, but notice here, Enzo probabilities as we head into the end of the year. You notice the blue uh, bar here represents La Nina, and it goes up all the way up till as high as 70%, and that is for OND, which stands for October, November, December. So La Nina chances are going to go up as we head into the end of the year, and we're kind of already seeing that happen. So it also makes it especially, you know, questioning as to why the Atlantic really is as inactive as it is, and the Pacific is as active as it is, especially because, the Atlantic is warm and we have a cool neutral to La Nina. You would think that the Atlantic would be really active by now, yet it isn't for some reason. And lots of speculation as to what might be causing it, whether it is tuts and wave breaking like a lot of people are mentioning, or as I just said, maybe the peak is really starting to become really, really late to this point that the peak is practically late September, early October. We'll see. But we do have a chance of development in the MDR right now, and we are seeing the chances for that increase. So we are starting to see things happen in the Atlantic. And of course, we'll monitor over the next week to see if this is our next storm in the making. And of course, beyond that, we will see where this tracks. And we'll see if something else happens beyond that. And maybe this might be the start of the actual peak of the hurricane season finally. But with that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's video. Hope you enjoyed what you saw today. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, as I always say every single video. And also make sure to turn on your notification bell too, so you can get these videos when I upload them. I'm going to continue to post these videos every single day till November, till the hurricane season completely finishes, and that is all the way not till November 30th. So until then, you can expect more videos from me, and we're going to continue to be doing these videos every day, if not just about. So please make sure to stay tuned and subscribe. And of course, with that being said, enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. But as of course, I will have more for you tomorrow. See you.